Question 1. Designate as sales associates can be assigned in a non-residential transaction if a. FREC appoints them, b. the broker signs off on it, c. the buyer and seller each have assets of $1 million or more, d. a no-broker relationship disclosure is signed. The correct answer is C. The buyer and seller each have assets of $1 million or more. In a non-residential transaction where the buyer and seller have over $1 million in assets and employing a broker can assign a designated sales associate for a buyer and one for a seller. Question 2. How old do you have to be in Florida to obtain a real estate license? A. 20 years old. B. 21 years old. C. 18 years old. D. 25 years old. The correct answer is C. 18 years old. To be a realtor, you must be at least 18 years old. Question 3. Before you take the Florida real estate exam, how many education hours do you need? A. 63 hours. B. 60 hours. C. 53 hours. D. 75 hours. The correct answer is A. 63 hours. You must complete a Florida Real Estate Commission, FREC, approved 63-hour pre-licensing classroom course. Question 4. In Florida, Mark has consented to execute a state business in the interest of Alex with Alex's authorization. Imprint is A. a licensed salesperson, B. a neutral party, C. an agent, D. a principal. The correct answer C. An agent. An agent transacts business or manages the task of another person. Example, the principal according to the authority of the regulation. A principal is a party that the agent represents and acts on behalf of, such as Alex Laurie is not necessarily a licensed salesperson. She can be an agent and hold another position, such as a broker, that requires an agency relationship. Question 5. In Florida, ownership of real property for an undetermined length of time is called A. non-freehold estate, leasehold estate, B. and est. C. a leasehold estate. D. a freehold estate. The correct answer is D. a freehold estate. A freehold estate is ownership of real property for an undetermined length of time. A non-freehold or leasehold estate has a determinable end. An estate is simply an interest in property that provides the right to possess the land. Question 6. What information would be unethical for a listing agent to share with a potential buyer? A. The neighbors next door are great and have 2 young children about the age of your kids. B. The local area affiliation charges are $800 this year. However, they will be going up to $1,200 1 year from now. C. The roof might need to be replaced in the next year or 2. D. The seller is very eager for an offer because he lost his job and found a new one in a different state. The correct answer is D. The seller is very eager for an offer because he lost his job and found a new one in a different state. It is improper for a posting specialist to enlighten an imminent purchaser's individual data regarding the vendor, regardless of whether it might support a deal. The main special case would be on account of a dealer educating the specialist to do as such. Doing so would be a confidentiality breach on the part of the listing agent. The broker should answer all questions related to the property honestly. Question 7. In Florida, a development has a standard that each home in the area is no less than 2,500 square feet. This is an illustration of which idea? A. Cooperative ownership. B. Restrictive covenant. C. Fair housing laws violation. D. Homestead laws. The correct answer is B. Restrictive covenant. Neighborhood developers or associations create restrictive covenants to ensure that the neighborhood maintains specific standards. Examples include minimum housing size, restrictions on architectural style, or mandated underground sprinkling. Question 8. Which of the following describes a transaction brokerage? A. The broker represents the buyer in the transaction. B. The broker represents both the buying and selling parties. C. The broker represents the seller in the transaction. D. The broker does not represent either party but provides general information and services to each. The correct answer is D. The broker does not represent either party but provides general information and services to each. In a transaction brokerage, the broker may help with available information or assistance, but she is not looking out for the specific interest of either the buying or selling party. Question 9. How much is an intangible tax on a real estate purchase mortgage? A. 002. B. 5. C. 1. D. 5.00. The correct answer is A. 002. Intangible tax is 0.002 multiplied by the total mortgage intangible taxes paid on new mortgages only. Question 10. In Florida, an agency contract is being ended. In which situation may there be harms owed to one of the gatherings? A. The owners discharged the agent because she was not acting in their best interest. B. The agent resigned from the contract because he is overloaded with homes to sell. C. The property owner discovers another claim on the title of the house. D. The agency files for bankruptcy? The correct answer is B. The agent resigned from the contract because he is overloaded with homes to sell. Agents and owners may leave from a sale, but they may be liable for damages due to a breach of contract. However, suppose there is a legally sound reason for resignation, such as the owners requesting the agent do something illegal or the agent not acting in the seller's best interest. In that case, there is no penalty for resignation. Being overloaded with homes to sell would not be considered a justifiable reason to end the contract. So the agent may owe the seller some damages, bankruptcy, death, legal incompetence, and multiple claims on the title all automatically terminate the agency relationship by law. Question 11. A buyer agrees to purchase a home once the sale of her current home is completed legally. This is known as A. Contingency, B. Option agreement, C. Specific performance, D. Negotiation. The right answer is A. Possibility or possibility provisions are a piece of the agreement of offer that permits a purchaser or vendor to escape the agreement without punishment on account of specifically indicated occasions. Question 12. Foreclosure occurs when a blank ceases and sells a borrower's blank after the borrower has failed to blank the lender. A. Being a lender home alert. B. Bank personal property appreciates. C. Lender collateral repay. D. Bank property notify. The correct answer is C. Lender collateral repaying. A lender requires collateral for a loan. And if the buyer defaults on the terms of the loan agreement, usually through failure to make payments on time, the lender can and will seize the collateral, usually the home and/or property. Question 13. Reversion of title is a feature of what type of interest? A. Fee simple. B. Fee simple condition subsequent. C. Fee simple conditions precedent. D. Fee simply determinable. The correct answer is D. Fee simple determinable. You may have been tempted to answer fee simple condition subsequent, which allows the right of reentry, the grantor's right to go to court to reclaim the property, and fee simple determinable, the title reverts to the grantor if a specific condition isn't met. Question 14. Mr. and Mrs. Cox make Mr. and Mrs. Green a proposal on their home. However, they have not heard back from them on whether or not the proposition has been acknowledged. Meanwhile, they have observed another home they might want to buy, all things being equal. What is their most ideal choice? A. Withdrew their offer with a penalty. B. Modify their offer to one they are confident Mr. and Mrs. Green will not accept. C. Wait for Mr. and Mrs. Green's response. If they accept the offer, pay the withdrawal fee outlined in the contract. D. Withdraw their offer with no penalty. The correct answer is D. Withdraw their offer with no penalty. Before an offer has been accepted, the buyers have the right to withdraw their offer with no liability. However, if the seller has already taken the offer, the proposal becomes a contract with legal obligations. Question 15. The lumber for a deck that has not yet been built is A. personal property.
B. A trade fixture. C. A fixture.
D. Real estate. The correct answer is A. Personal property is tangible, movable, and not permanently attached to real estate. The lumber can become a fixture and, therefore, real estate if the deck is built. A trade fixture is something used in conjunction with a business. Question 16. When a purchase agreement states the property is being sold as is it? A. Underscores the fact that nothing is warranted. Still requires the buyer to receive a transfer. Disclosure statement TDs noting any material facts which affect the property's value. B. Puts the buyer on notice they should be aware. C. Still requires the buyer to receive transfer disclosure statement TDs noting any material facts which affect the property's value. D. Releases the seller of the requirement to deliver a TDS to the buyer or discloses about the property's condition. The correct answer is C. Still requires the buyer to receive a transfer disclosure statement TDs noting any material facts which affect the property's value, as it is. It's a nebulous and frequently misunderstood statement in real estate practice. An exchange divulgence articulation TDS containing property data, including known or suspected property surrenders influencing esteem, should be conveyed to a forthcoming purchaser on the offer of a 4-unit private property when practicable at the beginning of dealings. Question 17. 17. The transfer disclosure statement TDS form is required on A. The sale of 1 to a 4-unit residential property. The sale of a commercial building. C. The sale of vacant land. D. All foreclosure sales. The correct answer is A. The sale of a 1 to 4-unit residential property. Many disclosure laws target 1 to 4-unit residential properties as a protected class of real estate. As a seller regarding known facts completes the transfer disclosure statement TDS form, it is not required in the instance of a foreclosure. Further commercial property transactions require the disclosure of property defects affecting value, but the statutory TDS form is not required. Question 18. Unlawful detainer UD action is instigated by
A. A grantor. B. A trustee. C. A lessor. D. A real estate broker.
The right answer is C. A lessor. An unlawful captor UD activity is to court procedures to constrain an inhabitant to clear the rental space they don't reserve the option to have. A lessor landowner is a bothered individual who starts this cycle against a no ideal person to possess a property, for example, a leftover inhabitant. Question 19. Joan sells her house to her brother Mike on a handshake. This contract is A. Valid only in certain states. B. Illegal. C. Valid because they are related. D. Unenforceable. The correct answer is D. Unenforceable. For a contract of sale to be valid, there must be signatures from both parties. Question 20. A transaction broker provides limited representation to A. Buyer and seller. B. Has fiduciary duties. C. Has a principal relationship. D. Is a single agent. The correct answer is A. Provides limited representation to a buyer and seller. A transaction broker provides limited representation and does not have fiduciary duties to a seller or buyer. Question 21. Broker Bianca needs to transform from a solitary specialist relationship to an exchange representative. A. She must get written permission from her principal. B. She may not do so. C. She must ask her broker. D. She must seek an attorney. The correct answer is A. She must get written permission from her principal that Bianca wants to change representation from a single agent to a transaction broker. She must obtain written permission from her employing principal buyer or seller. Question 22. When inspecting a residence in a hillside subdivision, the salesperson observes cracks in the foundation and notices the doors and windows do not close properly. As an issue of best practice, the salesman references their perceptions in the exchange exposure proclamation TDs and suggests what of coming up next be requested.
A. A home warranty policy. B. A special studies report. C. A soil engineer's inspection. D. A termite clearance.
The correct answer is C. A soil engineer's inspection. Here's an example of arriving at the correct answer by eliminating the wrong answers. Though the other answer still sections moderately relate to a property. The existence of cracks in a hillside subdivision indicates there may be a problem with the soil under the property, which a soil engineer best. Question 23. How much time does the testing agency give you to pass the Florida real estate exam? A. 1 hour. B. 2.5 hours. C. 3.5 hours. D. 5 hours. The correct answer is C. 3.5 hours. Candidates will be given 3.5 hours to complete the entire real estate exam. Question 24. Which is a broker not required to have visible on their office sign? A. A trading name. B. Licensed real estate broker. C. Broker name. D. Address. The correct answer is D. Address. Brokers are required to have their trade name, the words licensed real estate broker, and their full name on their office sign. Question 25. What is the purpose of underwriting to get a current appraisal? A. Home's value. B. To determine the risks of making a loan. C. To compare the interest rates of different lenders. D. To determine how much a property is worth. The correct answer is B. To determine the risks of making a loan. Mortgage lenders use a process called underwriting to assess the risk of making a loan to determine a potential borrower's risk. They look at factors such as salary, credit history, and terms of employment. Question 26. Sean, the tenant, pays the landlord monthly rent and is not responsible for property taxes or insurance. Sean has which type of lease? A. Ground lease. B. Variable lease. C. Net lease. D. Gross lease. The correct answer is D. Gross lease. Gross lease tenant pays rent, and the landlord pays taxes, insurance, and repairs. Net lease tenant pays rent plus costs such as taxes and insurance. Percentage lease tenant pays rent based on gross sales earned on leased property. Variable rent occupant pays lease which might increment in future. Ground rent inhabitant pays lease for land and assembles a structure on the land. Question 27. If a borrower puts down 10% on their home loan, what is the loan to value ratio? A. 20%. B. 90%. C. 80%. D. 10%. The correct answer is B. 90%. If a loan has a 90% loan to value ratio, the borrower is responsible for putting down 10%. Most conventional home loans have a loan to value ratio of 80%. Question 28. A property holder is purchasing another home however hasn't sold their old one. Which sort of advance would they get temporarily in restitution when their old house is sold? A. Swing. B. Home equity. C. Wraparound. D. Sale leaseback. The correct answer is A. Swing. A swing loan, also sometimes referred to as a bridge or gap loan, is a short-term loan that allows borrowers to borrow against their current property to buy a new one. They're typically taken out when the borrower wants to buy a bigger home but hasn't sold their existing property. Question 29. Which is not one of the 3 C's of underwriting? A. Credit. B. Capacity. C. Collateral. D. Conformity. The correct answer is D. Conformity. Capacity is the cash reserve and debt ratio of the borrower. Collateral includes their down payment property taxes. Credit has their credit score and accounts. Conformity is not one of the 3 C's of underwriting. Question 30. Who is the typical reverse mortgage customer? A. All of these. B. Someone with a lot of equity in their home. C. Someone with a lot of liquid capital. D. Someone elderly. The correct answer is A. All of these. In a reverse mortgage, the lender gives money to the borrower using the home itself as collateral. The loan typically does not require repayment until death or until the homeowner moves out. Reverse mortgages are popular options for those with all three of these attributes. Elderly and house rich and cash poor, meaning they have a lot of equity in their home, but not much liquid money. Question 31. According to HUD standards, which of the following would be an acceptable neighborhood advertisement? A. Traditional living. B. Exclusive neighborhood. C. Muslim friendly. D. Senior housing. The correct answer is D. Senior housing intended to serve those 55 and older is acceptable according to HUD standards. Words characteristic of race, religion, shading, familial status, sex, impairment, or public beginning are not adequate, nor remark that could be thought of as oppressive, for example, selective, prohibitive, customary, or board supported. Question 32. A real estate agent declines to show a Muslim couple of houses in a neighborhood because she feels the area isn't Muslim friendly. This is known as what? A. Good faith exception. B. Redlining. C. Steering. D. Blockbusting. The correct answer is C. Steering. Steering is the act of directing or not directing clients to a particular area based on race, religion, sex, familial status, national origin, or handicapped. While the agent may believe she acts benevolently by directing her buyers to an area, they will be comfortable. This practice is a violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Question 33. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. What affects which of the following? A. Third-floor apartment in a newly constructed apartment complex. B. An existing business with 20 employees. C. A single-family home. D. Multifamily home with 3 units. The correct answer is B. An existing business with 20 employees. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1996 accommodates those with disabilities by broadening their access to public facilities. With 15 or more employees, any current company must update its facility to conform with ADA rules and regulations. Almost all new construction, except for single-family homes, must be handicap accessible. At the same time, newly constructed ground floor apartments are subject to ADA regulations. Those on higher levels are not. As of 1988, multifamily buildings with 4 or more units must comply with ADA standards. Question 34. In Florida, when realtors address the purchaser and not the vendor of a piece of property, A. They're engaging in buyer protection. B. Buyer agency. C. Seller protection. D. Good faith. The correct answer is this B. Buyer agency is the term for representation in a real estate transaction. The principal, in this case, the buyer, gives legal authority to an agent to act on the principal's behalf when dealing with a third party. Question 35. Which of the following would not be considered a finance charge? A. An interest. B. Seller's points. C. Finder's fees. D. Appraisal fees. The correct answer is B. Seller's points. A finance charge is any charge made by the lender of credit that the borrower is directly or indirectly required to pay. The borrower isn't answerable for paying the merchant's focuses, however, for things, for example, locator's charges, examination expenses, and interest. Question 36. What is the primary purpose of Regulation Z? A. To let borrowers know the actual cost of credit to. B. To lock the borrower into a mortgage once the paperwork to be signed. C. To set a minimum interest rated. To limit the amount consumers can be charged. The correct answer is A. To let borrowers know the actual cost of credit. Regulation Z states the yearly percentage rate or APR cost of credit should be revealed when borrowers apply for credit. Regulation Z, also called the Truth in Lending Act, does not set a minimum or maximum interest rate. Question 37. If you are representing both the buyer and the seller of a piece of real estate, it's called A. Double representation. B. Dual agency. C. Does a real estate. D. Double agency. The correct answer is B. Dual agency. While the dual agency is not legal in all states, in some states, A real estate agent is allowed to represent both the buyer and seller of a piece of real estate. Dual agency is sometimes referred to as limited agency. Question 38. Under no circumstances may a real estate broker misrepresent a material fact to a buyer. If they do, the broker faces A. Disciplinary action by the Department of Real Estate, DRE. B. Criminal action. C. Civil action. D. Any of the above. The correct answer is D. Any of the above. A material fact affects the value and desirability of a property. The inability to uncover is a critical break of the representative's trustee obligation to their customers. On the off chance that the inability to reveal ascends to the degree of misrepresentation or trickery, the broker may be subject to civil or criminal penalties depending on the nature of the misconduct. Question 39. Blank is when an individual can be paid for brokering a real estate transaction, yet represent neither the buyer nor the seller. A. Situational brokerage. B. Transactional brokerage. C. Divisional brokerage. D. Individual brokerage. The correct answer is B. Transactional brokerage. Transactional brokerage is only legal in some states, and care must be taken to see the duties and responsibilities for the agents brokering a deal, if they are not representing either side of the agreement. Question 40. In Florida, potential gross pay short opening and assortment misfortunes are A. Inadequate gross income. B. Net income. C. Total income. D. Potential income. The correct answer is inadequate gross income. Sufficient income is potential gross income minus vacancy and collection losses to calculate net operating income minus operating expenses from the good gross income. Question 41. When a person or entity uses the land of another for a specific purpose, it is known as A. Easement. B. Literal right. C. Restrictive covenant. D. Lien. The correct answer is A. Easement. The most common types of easements are access utility and drainage easements. Question 42. Some states have blank that require agents to disclose who they are representing to the buyers. A. Agent identification clauses. B. Agency disclosure laws. C. Agency branding laws. D. Agent identification laws. The correct answer is B. Agency disclosure laws. Organization divulgence laws assist clear with increasing disarray over whose interests are being addressed in an exchange. These laws are set up to shield purchasers from being deluded by specialists who are addressing the dealers. Question 43. Chris has been driving through Ashley's property for the past 20 years to get to work. Chris has which type of easement? A. Appurtenant. B. Gross. C. Prescription. D. Necessity. The correct answer is C. Prescription. Easement by prescription is created after continuous usage of another's property for 20 years. Question 44. Jim, the sales associate, receives an escrow deposit on Tuesday. When is the deadline to turn it over to his broker? A. Wednesday. B. Thursday. C. Friday. D. Saturday. The correct answer is A. Wednesday. Jim must turn the escrow deposit over to his broker by the end of the next business day of receiving it Wednesday. Question 45. Tenancy by the entireties convey title at the same time and must be A. Husband and wife. B. An unequal percentage. C. Tenants in common. D. Undivided interest. The correct answer is a husband and wife. Tenancy by the entireties is a tenancy between husband and wife, and the right of survivorship must exist. Question 46. Which of the following conditions would not cause a building to be declared uninhabitable? A. Dampness and habitable room. B. Electrical wiring that is safe and working correctly but does not comply with current building codes. C. There is no heating in the entire property.
D. A broken window at the back of the house.
The correct answer is B. Electrical wiring that is safe and working correctly but does not comply with the current building code. This inquiry is expressed in the adverse answer choices as C and D. Render the investment property appalling. The electrical wiring is fundamentally longer. Reply. More detailed answer selection does not trigger the inhabitable defense since it is safe and functional, even though it does not meet current building codes. Question 47. Which document outlines the environmental effects that are caused by new development? A. An environmental development report. B. An environmental impact report. C. An environmental project report. D. Environmental risk report. The correct answer is B. Environmental impact report. The environmental impact report statement describes the likely environmental effects and new development will have. The document is sometimes required by local governmental agencies before new construction is started. 48. Which of these would determine if there is an encroachment on a property? A. Survey. B. Easement. C. Ejectment. D. Appraisal. The correct answer is a survey. A. Survey determines if one's building or property encroaches trespasses on another's. A survey is typically part of a real estate contract. Question 49. What is meant by riparian rights? A. The former property owner still lives at the property, but it has officially been sold. B. There is no legal owner to the land, so the property becomes the government's possession. C. The property owner has the property that borders a moving body of water. D. The property was given to the current owner by a deceased family member. The correct answer is C. The property owner has the property that borders a moving body of water. Suppose a property owner has riparian rights. Their property borders a moving body of water such as a river or stream. Typically, a property owner with riparian rights cannot meddle with the natural flow of the water touching their property. Question 50. The state is when a person prepares a will before death, and interstate is when a person dies without a will prepared. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is true. If a person prepares a will and then dies, this is known as a test state. If the person dies without a choice, this is known as interstate.